Morning, everyone. Lovely for you to join me this morning. I hope you're all doing well and feeling okay during lockdown. I've actually washed my hair, so it's quite an exciting, busy day today. We'll just wait just a little bit longer just to see if anyone else is joining just before we start. But just to mention that this is kind of the next in this Introduction to Meditation series. So if you didn't actually join for the previous video, it doesn't matter for this, but you can catch it, and I'll probably put the link just at the bottom of the video. So if you want to catch up with that Introduction to Meditation, then you can do that at any time. Okay, so we will begin. So I know last week we just looked a little bit at some of the challenges and barriers that you might face when you start meditating. And we talked a little bit about thoughts. And one of the things that I mentioned is this kind of tendency that we have, particularly when we start sitting and noticing our thoughts, we realise that they're actually sort of predominantly negative. And this can be quite an uncomfortable thing when we first realise it. And the reason why I wanted to go into a bit more detail on this negativity bias is I actually found this really sort of relieving and quite refreshing when I first learnt about this, because I think given that we have this tendency to think more negatively, when we start noticing that we're thinking negatively, when we don't understand this negativity bias, all that happens is that we create more negativity, and we can be quite judgmental towards ourselves and quite critical, I think, of some of the thoughts we have. So it's really interesting to understand that actually this is a hangover from millions of years of evolution that is happening in our brain. And this is because if we cast our mind back to when we were hunter-gatherers and living in cave dwellings, we had a lot more really imminent threat and danger around us, and we didn't actually have the physical attributes to be able to protect ourselves in this way. So we didn't have long claws or sharp teeth. We couldn't run particularly quickly to get away from predators. But what we did have was amazing intellect and cunning. And what it meant is that we were very, very good at anticipating threats and danger. And so over time, this became a really essential part of our survival. And it's actually the reason that we survived. So in many ways, we should be very, very grateful for it. And what would happen is that our minds would constantly be on the lookout for threats and danger so that we were able to avoid it and keep ourselves safe and alive. The hangover of this is that we still have this part of our brain. So it's still looking constantly for these threats and these dangers in our environment. But the world has changed significantly since it was, tens of thousands of years ago. And we don't actually need to be tuning in such a strong way to the negative around us. It actually now has a kind of very detrimental effect on our well-being and our mental health and our happiness. And it's said that it can take as little as 1/10 of a second for a negative experience to go straight into our long-term memory. And actually, it takes much, much longer for a positive experience to go into our long-term memory. And that's because it isn't considered as necessary for our survival. And when they've done brain scanning, when someone is having a negative experience, there's a huge amount of activity in the brain. And when there's a positive experience, there's less activity. So these negative experiences are very strong. And they really stick with us. And I think we all know this. If we cast our mind back through our lives, we find it very, very easy to remember all the criticism that we've received in our life, but we find it very, very difficult to actually recall compliments or pleasant things that people have said. So all of this can sound a bit depressing, but the wonderful news is that we actually have the power to address this balance. And there's a saying that neurons fire together, wire together. And actually simply by starting to focus our awareness and our attention on the pleasant and the positive things, we actually strengthen this part of the brain. So I just want to state that this isn't about this kind of idea of fake positivity and everything's wonderful all of the time, because that's just not true and it's not reality. But what we're simply trying to do is readdress this really, really unbalanced factor that we have this natural ability to focus so easily on the negative. So think of it more as a rebalancing rather than sort of completely eradicating, because this negativity bias serves a very, very strong purpose. It's still very important, we still want to be able to notice threats and danger, and we don't want to, not be using it, but it's just about, readdressing the balance a little bit. So, because it takes so much longer for a pleasant and a positive experience to stick in our long-term memory, what we have to do is actively engage in these experiences in a different way to really allow them to absorb into our being. So the simplest and the most effective way to do this is actually just by using our senses. So normally what happens, something pleasant will happen. We might have a little moment where we think, well, that's nice, but it very quickly sort of washes over us. And what we need to do is actually just really absorb ourselves in that experience. So it's a really enjoyable practice, and you can try it anytime, anywhere. If you find yourself outside in a particularly beautiful place, just take a moment to stand there for 10, 15 seconds, just really noticing what you can hear, tuning into any pleasant sounds, seeing if you can smell anything, just noticing if there's any pleasant feeling on the skin. It might just be a gentle breeze or the feeling of the warm sun. And just really trying to use all of your senses to actively engage with that experience, and just imagine it really sinking down into your memory and into your being. And you can do this as well when you're having a conversation with someone. If someone's giving you a really nice piece of news or giving you some praise, often the inner critic will come up and actually disagree with whatever the person's saying. But can you actually just sit there and let those words really sink into you? And the wonderful thing is, the more that you practice this over time, the more you're strengthening this part of the brain, and it becomes an ingrained habit. So the beautiful thing is that over time, you start to naturally notice the pleasant, even in the most unpleasant of situations. So it's like finding the silver lining, but in a very, very sort of natural and organic way. And it's a really, really lovely practice. So it doesn't take any extra time. It's simply about seeking out the pleasant and just taking a moment to really, really engage with whatever that might be. So I hope that all makes sense. If anyone has any questions, please feel free just to write in the chat, and we can answer. I can answer anything as best I can. And if not, then we will just move on to a little meditation, so an exercise that we're going to do to seek out the pleasant. So I'll just wait a couple of seconds just to see if anyone's got anything to ask. Okay, lovely. So this is just going to be a short meditation, and it's just helping us to tune into this way that we can start engaging with things. So actually actively seeking out what's pleasant in the moment. So if you want to make yourself comfortable, as mentioned last week, that's one of the most important things that we're looking for in our meditation. So whether that's in a chair, or if you're seated on the floor, or lying down, if that's the only thing that's available for you to be comfortable. Taking any little fidgets or movements that you need just to get yourself really settled. And then either just gently closing down your eyes, or finding a soft gaze if this is more comfortable. And then just starting to tune into your natural breath. So not trying to control the rhythm of the breath in any way. Just simply allowing the breath to flow in and out of the body in whichever rhythm feels most natural today. Just allowing your body just to settle into the weight of gravity. Feeling where your body is in contact with the floor or the chair or the bed. And just seeing if you can really allow your body just to sink down and fully let go. Relaxing the face and the shoulders and the arms and the hands. Just taking a moment to allow your body to arrive and settle. And just bringing your awareness now into your whole body. So just starting to tune in to what's happening in the body. And what you might find is that your mind naturally wants to move towards that which is less pleasant in your experience. So at first, we're just going to allow our awareness to move to any unpleasant sensations in the body. Maybe there's a tightness in the shoulders or the back. Maybe it's an emotional sensation in the chest or the abdomen. So we're just going to rest our awareness here for a few breaths. Not trying to push away any of these sensations. Not trying to resist anything. But just gently washing these areas with our soothing breath. Giving them the attention that they need and deserve. Softening around any hardness that we might be creating to these sensations. Noticing that they're not quite as fixed or as solid as we might think. In the same way that our breath comes and goes, these sensations are constantly changing and transforming. So really just using your breath just to breathe into anything that's uncomfortable or unpleasant in your experience. Now we're just going to move our awareness to actively seek out the pleasant. And it might be that these sensations are very subtle. It might be that simply the absence of something unpleasant is in itself pleasant. It might be that there's a nice feeling of a material against your skin. Maybe a softness in your hands or your face. Maybe a gentle tingling in the body. Or simply just noticing the movement of the breath as it moves in and out. Maybe this is pleasant. Maybe there's a pleasant sound in your surroundings. Maybe a pleasant scent. Just using all of your senses to really engage with this moment and seek anything pleasant in the moment, however subtle that might be. And just gently bringing a very small smile to the face, which in itself can be very pleasant. can often help the face just to relax. And we're just going to rest our awareness here for a few breaths. Just bathing ourselves in all things pleasant. And then when you're ready, we're gently going to bring this practice to a close. So taking any gentle movement in the body and slowly opening your eyes. Lovely. So yeah, that's a really nice little meditation to get in the habit of practicing. And don't worry if you find it quite difficult to seek out the pleasant. As we've sort of looked at, it can be very, very natural for us to steer towards what is more unpleasant in our experience. So if you find that happening, then you might just want to start by actually just resting your awareness gently with the more unpleasant sensations and seeing if you can just bring an openness and a kindness and compassion to those sensations. Because it might be that they're actually asking for your attention, and that before you can really make an effort to seek out what's pleasant, perhaps you need to just spend a little time resting with what needs your attention within your body. So if anyone's got any questions, then please don't hesitate to ask. And next week we will be doing another video. So I will be looking at how we sort of work with our thoughts when we're meditating. So some techniques around that. And then again, we will finish with a short little meditation together. So it was lovely practicing with you all. I hope to see you next week. And yes, please do get in touch if there's anything that you'd like to know or anything else that you'd like to see. So have a wonderful day and thanks very much. Bye.